Right, so we jumped ahead. Let's see. Oh, there you go. Okay. So I want to tell you a story. Now, to the Brits in the audience, who knows? Well, you already know because you already saw his picture. But hands up if you don't know whose catchphrase that was. You're going to claim you do. Okay? None of the millennials are going to claim they don't. Well, it was allegedly Max Bygraves. But Max actually never said that. It was, and do you know who that is?
Yes. Mike Young.
There you go. Now, Mike, and anybody who saw his impersonations would understand that his impersonation of Max Bygraves sounded exactly like Mike Yarwood. It was terrible. And he just used that catchphrase. So again, just to show you that fake news has been around for a long time. Now, to be honest, they were truly awful. But they were part of, in the 70s and the 80s, in British comedy, a whole lineup of racists, angry white men. It was truly awful TV. But what choice did we have? You know? Now, once competition did enter into the market, it did start to get better. Now, to the Brits in the audience, the comedy show is? There you go, good. So there are some first-class British passport holders here. It's good to see. So they did introduce some very interesting. Now, to the we've got at least one American here, but. This show, it was very funny, but always after each show, it left you feeling mentally dirty, I think is the way I would describe League of Gentlemen. So, getting back to the story I want to tell you about. So, it's a sad story. It involves a youngish engineer working on BT broadband access. As you can see, compare the pictures. This is what time and excessive quantities of alcohol do to you, okay? Just so you understand the lesson. Now, I was trying to change an incumbent's intransigence, and it was all around this vicious deer in headlights cycle that was taking place, where we put together the fiber to the home business case, and then the board would throw up over it. What? $2,000 to $3,000 per home pass? No way! So then you go back and you show them the DSL business case, and they look at it and go, well, we're sort of giving customers E1 lines today for like $10,000 a month, and you want to give it away for $10 a month? Where's the business case? And anyway, you know, is DSL even future-proof? You've been talking to us about fiber to the home for several decades now, so surely that's what we need to be doing, and we just go around this vicious cycle again and again and again through the 1990s to the point whereby I decided I'll go off and do something else. Now, this resulted in the situation we see here. This doesn't show up very brightly, unfortunately, but you can see the little arrow at the bottom there, where the UK is with respect to VoIP in 2007. Basically, it was way behind. And let's face it, when you're behind the Dutch, that's a problem. So never mind Eastern Europe. Now, as DSL and especially local loop unbundling finally started to roll out, within 5 years, the UK had started to catch up and has continued to over the years. So just to draw an analogy between awful TV comedians to at least something that was entertaining but left you feeling mentally dirty, to a similar situation in telecoms where competition and choice has improved the situation. So at least the UK was able to catch up with the Dutch. But as that has progressed over the last 6 odd years, it's been interesting to see what broadband, both fixed and mobile, and that competition as choice has resulted in a far more complex situation. Here, it's just latest data from the Ofcom slides showing basically the called minutes dropping by 50% between 2013 and 2018. So people are calling less and less, but also bear in mind, Ofcom have purposefully not talked about VoIP, just so people wouldn't realize how much the incumbent was retarding the UK market. But again, you're going to get enough bashing of BT from Simon, so I'm not going to waste time there. But also what's really interesting, oh, thank you. Oh, there you go. What's going on here? Because that one was, yeah. Just not enough umph. There you go. So here is showing the total revenues. So here you can see, even though people were using less and less and less, it's been going up. Now finally, the incumbent is starting to react. So all the competition that's taking place, we are starting to see that impact the overall pricing in the market. Because really, it's when the incumbents start doing something, that's when you see these curves start to have an impact. So as you can see here, competition has created a more complex market, but revenues are still very healthy thanks to buckets and bundles. So now I'm going to hop out of the UK. I'm going to travel over to the US. Now, US, of course, is a different market because of the different pricing regime. It's about half the market for SIP trunking. But I show here, it was 2018 when finally people were spending more on SIP trunks than on the legacy stuff. So even there, which is one of the highest VoIP markets in the world, it's still slow progress. And of course, Twilio, which is always sort of referred to as a CPaaS company, it's not. It's enterprise comms, soup to nuts. It does everything. Let's face it, it has 85 or 90% of a contact center. That's a contact center. It's relying on its ecosystem to fulfill. So it's doing everything. They supply into this segment. So a lot of the revenue growth you've seen in Twilio has nothing to do with selling APIs and everything to do with selling SIP trunking, on-demand SIP trunking with a ton of bundled services in that are free so people can understand what voice recording can do and then realize, I actually want to pay for it. Rather than, oh, you want voice recording? We'll enable that for you and then immediately start charging across all the lines. So this has been a key piece of revenue growth. Now, I don't use the word analyst. I help people. It's just I've been in the market so damn long that I sort of have an understanding of history, and that understanding of history says, look, we're repeating ourselves yet again. But here's an analyst, and of course, with analysts, you can get any data you want, any number you want from any analyst. That's part of the game that's played. So here's an analyst I agree with, and they're showing that VoIP by 2025 is going to be around a $55 billion market. I agree with that. It's a pretty accurate number. So VoIP is the horse to bet on in this market. Okay, I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but just to show you that there are overall numbers on the game that you're playing here. Now, of course, as I mentioned, there's a lot of bullshit out there from analysts. Here's another one, Juniper, operator voice revenue is going to drop by 45% because of over the top. I have no clue what over the top means. Again, it seems to be basically some self-focused term that's used to anybody but me. I call this one bullshit. They're going to basically continue to keep their revenues ticking over. It's going to be through their own incompetence in thinking telephony is some kind of commoditized service they shouldn't be bothered with. That's the opportunity for all the people in this room to come in and serve customers that have got fed up with BT and move on. But I want to spend a little time, just a little bit of diversion, and I'll come back and give you some numbers, okay? So it's important to understand who pays the analysts. Now, these are old names. I only do that so none of the current players, sort of get that pissy with me. And they're paid by these big brands, including Twilio now. Twilio has its indoctrination events where it wheels in a whole host of analysts. They have their analyst relations people that talk about how smart and amazing the analysts are by being able to repeat the talking points and the indoctrination that they're given at the indoctrination events. But these are the guys that are setting the messages in the market. So part of what we need to realize that when we're looking at all those emails that come in with news items, with analyst reports, that actually it's repeating the messages from a few large vendors, and to be honest with you, most of it is utter bollocks. Cloud. The world's more complex than that. If you're doing business in Germany, you need to be able to give the address where the customer's data is being stored. That's not cloud. The world is hybrid. We need to get to post-cloud. It is important, don't get me wrong, but in reality, you need to look beyond just fashionable statements. And also, to be honest with you, I know a lot of, for example, CPaaS providers that aren't really CPaaS. They've got their servers running in a data center somewhere. There's also fashionable theories analysts like to kick out time and time again. 10 years ago, it was all about how enterprises need to have their version of Facebook running inside the enterprise. Well, hey, where did that end up? There's also just dumbass terms. Digital was cool 50 years ago, when you had your digital watch and TTL logic. 50 years later, it's a bit passé. And also, what the hell does transformation mean? Well, it means trying to catch up. So when somebody is using the word digital transformation, understand it's an incumbent supplier saying to their customer, keep spending your money with me. That's all digital transformation means. There's false messaging wars. Microsoft Teams versus Slack. Well, the answer is both. Lots of enterprises have both. And in fact, there's companies that can help you interoperate between those. There's Rich Communication Suite. Enough said, it's been going on for 10 years. It'll be going on for another 10 years. API economy. API is a HTTP request. It's the service you expose through the API that matters. And I'll be coming back to that later. So it's not the API economy, it's the service economy. When you see evangelists talking about API and DI, it's bullshit. It's all about the services. There's also BABS, so that stands for Bay Area Bullshit Artists. Normally they'll be in this position that I'm in, and they will tell you they come from the Bay Area, hence they know everything and you know nothing, particularly about bullshit topics like AI. There's also stock market math. I'll skip over that one as that's passé. 5G, guys, 4G is good enough. We're even seeing that now finally in Asia, where 5G rollout is slowing down, where they realize customers aren't prepared to pay for it anymore. Yes, because 4G is good enough. If I'm getting 100 megabits with basically 20 milliseconds ping time, that's pretty good even for augmented reality applications. Also, all the bias quadrants. You see it all the time. We're in the top right quadrant. Guess what? Those quadrants are defined by large enterprises in the US. That is not relevant to most of Europe, especially to all of Asia. They've got large IT departments that don't care about delivering something that actually meets what the end user needs. All they care about is long lists of features so their arse is covered when one department goes, I want this feature. So it's different type of buyers. Again, because you've got a diversity of customers out there, that's what means most of the people here are in business because of that. And again, means the quadrants really aren't that relevant. Most of the awards out there are just pay to play. The only awards that matter in this industry are, of course, the SimCon awards, because you don't pay to get on them. Also, current fashion, you've got to have UCaaS, CPaaS, so Unified Communication as a Service, Contact Center as a Service, and Communication Platform as a Service all together, otherwise it's not a relevant offer. Again, total bullshit. Again, every new technology that comes out has inflated expectations. It's like bots 5 years ago, we're going to get rid of agents. Now people have realized with bots, it's a far more constrained problem. You don't give it too much training. You don't make it too general. In fact, we have a great presentation from David Curran of OpenJaw Technologies at TAD Summit EMEA back in November. Just go to blog.tadsummit.com. You'll see the content there. Simon also gave a great closing keynote there. You keep the problem very constrained. So again, always technology is thrown in and it's overstated. And that's the analyst's fault, rather than basically a nice linear curve in terms of, we think it's going to do this next year and the year after. They go, it's going to be amazing. And then reality hits, and then, most of it dies. and then a few carry on. Analysts should be doing all these nice linear curves. When you see an analyst claiming this is the way technology is, it's not. Their industry is broken. Also, AI, artificial intelligence, doesn't exist, will not exist for at least 10 to 20 years. So when you've got, especially at enterprise communications coming up at the end of this month, and you've got all these people talking about AI assist, bullshit, it doesn't exist. Also, digital is just applied to everything. Again, it's 50-year-old word. It was cool when I was a kid and I had my first digital watch where I had to press a button so the LEDs came on so I could see the time. You know, that was cool when digital was being used. So we've got a bit of an unlevel playing field out there where basically, you know, all the emails, all the social media posts, all the words that are used out there are just bollocks, because it's the large enterprises that are driving these sort of misconceptions, because they just want their customers to continually digitally transform. That is, keep paying me money without asking too many questions. So I'm here to give you some numbers to help you understand the opportunity for being smaller players in this market. Okay? So the way I break the market down: underlying everything is open source, and of course, communication enabling software and platforms. This is mainly in-app is WebRTC related stuff, public CPaaS, because there's private CPaaS as well. Business messaging, so a lot of business messaging providers will claim they're CPaaS because it's a trendy word, and financial analysts give you great valuations because of Twilio, but they're not. They're doing messaging only. There's all the automation technologies that we've mentioned, and then really, there's just two types of communication out there. There's employee communications and customer communications. And I'm going to break some of this down. And of course, the thing that's always missed off, but actually captures about half the revenue in this ecosystem, is the channel. I show some big guys here, but there's lots and lots of little players, and those little players are very important for most small, medium enterprise players and even mid-market around the world. So these are the three areas I'm just going to focus on, give you some pretty pictures with some logos on, and then share with you some numbers. So open source, and this is just the tip of a large number of open source projects out there. Of course, we're going to be hearing from Quayle, as well as Asterix, FreePBX. There are interesting projects like Wiseau that are taking some of these components and making it easier and easier for businesses to be able to use the power of these open source projects. An important thing to realize is that big, sort of set of blocks I showed, this sort of programmable communications market, there's over $100 billion there. And most of it is sat on some of these projects. So it's very important to our industry. Now this shows the public CPaaS market. Again, there's logos I need to add. There's a lot of movement, companies buying companies all the time because it's fashionable. Everybody claims to be a CPaaS. And what I did, very dumb, is I took the names, made estimates of what the revenues are, what the growth is going to be, then sort of how the split breaks down. Because a lot of these CPaaS are also doing SIP trunking, are doing IoT, doing authentication, 2FA, stuff like that. So, the world is more complex. So I just basically sort of listed these companies because they self-identify as CPaaS and are sort of valid. And this breaks down the market. So this is the total market growing from about sort of 4.8 billion up to over 14 billion, and then the different curves within there. And IDC, one of the analysts everybody quotes, I'm a bit bigger here, but that's because they don't know half the market. I'm introducing their people to the CPaaS providers. And we sort of match up here. Overall, it's a little bit bigger, but that's because I include some of the other lines of business that the CPaaS providers are doing in there. Now let's look onto the more interesting piece, which is employee communications. So this is all the phone systems, okay? I know UC is used, unified communications, as a great term. You see interviews by The CFO from RingCentral talking about customers want UC. This is bullshit generally. They want phone systems. This tends to be a winner takes all. So you don't tend to see multiple phone systems. When a business decides on one, it's across the business. However, on messaging and collaboration, you do see multiple platforms. So this is your winner takes all, and then this tends to be a little bit more complex. And there's a lots of other messaging platforms than Slack. I just sort of list a few of them in here just to show. And again, same approach. Just basically looked at all the players, estimates of what the revenues could be, the growth, all the breakdown. And then what I did was broke it down into here's the total enterprise voice UC market. So going from sort of 10 to 17 billion. Now this, of course, immediately anybody who looks at all the analyst numbers will go, well, Alan, that's like nearly half of what the analysts are telling. Well, yes, because I've not included the channel and some of the telco piece in there as well. So there's lots of other pieces, but what I wanted to focus on is this line down here. These are the small players, not the big legacy players, but all these small players in the UC, or hosted voice, hosted PBX. And what's really interesting in this line, and this is this point here, about 80% of them are using open source software. And the average age is only 6.5 years old. So open source has helped enable this market growing from 4 to 8 billion nearly by 2012. So it's very interesting segment to which all relevant to the players in this space. So that was just to give you some pretty logo charts, but also to give you some numbers of the total VoIP market, 55 billion, but then to break it down into, well, let's look at the sort of hosted voice, hosted PBX market, and for the small players, not the big players who are feeding the market with bullshit, but the little guys. So part of my job is helping people understand that they've been fed bullshit. And there's lots of false narratives, is the polite term for bullshit. RingCentral, Microsoft, Zoom, 8x8 are not destined to own UC. Okay? If you talk to the analysts, they're not being in investor meetings where they bring in a BABS artist to come and tell them that RingCentral's won, this company they want to invest in has no chance because everybody's going to be on RingCentral. Well, unless you're a big, large US corporation with loads of money and an IT department that wants to cover their ass, guess what? The world's more complex. And, as a channel, be opportunistic, with these ecosystems. Have a store brand and a name brand. If you've got a customer that's so sad and demented that they are a Microsoft shop and they want Microsoft Teams, then look, here we have it and we can support it locally and we can do everything with their Teams. But also have a store brand. So you have something that you can sell that's a fraction of the price and just does what the customer needs, rather than a whole long list of stuff for large US IT departments. And as I said, most businesses don't want UC. Most businesses don't even understand what UC is. It's called a bloody phone system. Most businesses don't have an IT department. They may have an IT department in terms of a couple of people that are blamed every time something's not working, but that's not an IT department. What matters is a local person, somebody based in North London, somebody based in Birmingham, if not within basically, or in Ashton-under-Lyne, in Manchester, as an example, that is local, that they can trust, that makes it easy for them in running their IT and communication technologies. We can't underestimate that because it's all about people. So while we have RingCentral CFO talking about everybody's going to be on RingCentral, the world is a damn sight more complex than the cloud-based world they're presenting. And also, let's be frank, most people are frugal. Saving money matters. It's not an IT department with money to spend. These are sort of your business owners that are looking for you to help them save money and get out of the hell that they're with their local incumbent telco. That, to be honest, for most telcos, consider telecommunications a commoditized business that they're not interested in anymore. That's an important thing to remember, that many telcos are walking away from this business because it's commoditized. It's not really where we need to be focusing. We're focusing on edge, on IoT, on cloud, on digital transformation. That is, paying their incumbent vendors money year after year. So ignore the noise, focus on your customers. Now, who is your customer? Well, it isn't a white, basically middle class wannabe president that's funded by billionaire donors. It's a whole variety of customers that have a whole range of needs and problems and concerns. It's that diversity of customers that's helping you survive. Let's face it, BT's mostly assumes that its customer is a white male funded by billionaires. Well, the rest of the world isn't like that, and it's taking advantage of that. Is why all the businesses here survive. Diversity is the key to survival in all these small businesses. Back to false narratives. Open source software underlies the majority of the programmable communications market. I shared before. It's 100 billion. Now, let's do an analogy here. 82% of web servers are open source. So the internet, the web we know today is, basically the underlying enabling technology is open source. For those smaller programmable telecom players I showed, that little UC curve going 4 to 8 billion, about 80% of them are open source as well. So again, it's very interesting some of the analogies we can draw between the smaller players that are taking advantage of open source to be on a completely different cost build to those that are implementing everything on IMS. Also, open source is your best defense, again, for smaller players, because it's a riding boat helps, a rising tide of open source helps all boats. Employee comes, as I've mentioned, for smaller players, is a big, rapidly growing market. And likely you've got 10 billion up for grabs from telcos that are walking away from telecoms. I've run events, so I run programmable telecom events, run them since 2013. And, it used to be funded by a lot of telcos and their big vendors. But they've decided that this whole thing, it's just too commoditized, it's too difficult, it's too webby. We like our own ivory little tower of our proprietary standards and interconnect. So they no longer really, they still attend TAD Summit, they no longer sponsor. It's the smaller players that are building around this, that are taking a internet-based model. So again, ignore the noise, open source works and it works at scale. And you're going to be hearing from that in some of the later presentations. But this is an important point. Now I know Jim Mackey got a lot of negativity from an article he did, and he deserves it because he didn't explain it correctly. There's an open source opportunity cost, okay? There's an opportunity cost in everything. So there's the line here, which is time spent earning dollars on your core business, okay? And then there's time spent having fun doing the latest update to the latest release. And when you're saving yourself money and it's a significant amount, look at the time I spent and look how much money we're saving rather than paying this vendor this much per month per seat. But the problem is, as you get busier and busier on this side, oh shit, where's the password? You're not following the community. You're doing the update and it's like, oh damn, this was a known issue. I should have done. There's all that practical reality hits. I'll give you a simple, painful, personal example of the opportunity cost curve. As I mentioned, once upon a time I was running events where telcos and their suppliers would sponsor loads of money. They basically just would happily lay down fair cash. I could afford to bring in AV people to do all the recording and all the stuff for me. Now I have smaller, tighter sponsors, so I do the AV. So there's a reverse opportunity cost. But we move along this. So when you start off using open source, great, but as you grow, as you become more successful, and I've shown you, 4 to 8 billion is up there for grabs for the smaller players. This isn't going to be a market dominated by just RingCentral, Microsoft, etc. It's important to look at. It may not become core, and having a partner that can help you in managing that becomes more important. So a few more false narratives that are out there. Everyone's talking about CPaaS. So hey, I need a CPaaS offer. Well, guys, it's game over. Twilio's won. Google, AWS have defined developer expectations. It's the big guys, okay? However, most businesses want solutions to business problems. You hear the API evangelists, it's API, API, API. No, businesses just want faster, cheaper, better, which means customers want services, not APIs. Simple example. Hey, we have this SMS API. You can make up this alerting app. So then, as a business, I have to research, define the service, hire a developer, project time, money, support. I'm a software developer. No, I don't want to be a software developer. Having an API that exposes a service that enterprise can consume, or they can just use the service directly through some web configuration, could be far more appropriate. So most channels don't want to use generic APIs. They want a service that they can consume. That can be through an API, can be simply through some configuration. The customers definitely can't use that API. So again, there's misfocus on it's all about the API. It's not. It always has been about the service. You need a partner to help you do the API stuff so you can focus on delivering services that are appropriate to your partner. Now, don't get me wrong. When you start doing stuff, delivering these appropriate services, whether it's through an API or just a configured service to a customer, it creates lock-in. Once an enterprise starts using the Twilio API, it could be just the voice API or the SMS API, you start building stuff around it. You start building processes around it, and it creates lock-in. It becomes a pain in the arse to migrate from Twilio to another API provider. This is that customization piece. And it doesn't have to be through a generic API. It can equally be through a service that's built to a customer's specific needs. So, ignore the noise, focus on your customer and the services that they need. Seriously, it's all about the services. Now, I know it's fun to focus on technology and all the analyst bullshit that's out there, but seriously, it's all about the services. Okay, but what services? And it really is simple. It's a great value phone system backed by unmatched local support. Kept saying these three things: local, trust, easy. That's what defines this market for the smaller players. You're making it easier for your customers because they trust you, and you're local. That is, somebody will turn up to their office. And it's programmable. That can mean configuration or an API to solve the customer's specific problems. That's this new layer. This is the opportunity. And whether you do it all yourself or you bring in a partner to help you, that's your prerogative. Key is to ignore the noise and focus on the specific needs of your customer and the services that fulfill that. So, back to the beginning. Are we there yet? Well, no. But the path is getting clearer. So remember these three things. It's about local, trust, and making it easy for your customers. And my parting thought is, please don't go too local. And with that, I'm done. Thank you.